Thank you for joining us. My name is Jennifer Homendy, and I'm a board member with the National Transportation Safety Board. With me today is Dan Bauer, who is a senior investigator with our Major Investigations Division of our Office of Aviation Safety at the NTSB. The NTSB is an independent federal agency charged by Congress with investigating every civil aviation accident in the United States and major transportation disasters in the other modes. Let me first state, on behalf of the NTSB, we'd like to extend our deepest condolences to those who lost loved ones in this tragic event. For those who were injured, we wish a speedy and full recovery. The NTSB arrived on scene at about 4 p.m. this afternoon, and we began to assess the scene. We will be collecting perishable evidence over the next hours and days as we begin our investigation. And again, we just arrived on scene. But our mission is to determine what happened, why it happened, and to prevent it from happening again. We have a total team, including me, of 10 on scene. We have investigators who have expertise in operations, airworthiness, and we will also have a drone specialist on scene who will help us document the scene. In addition, we will have staff from the NTSB from our Family Assistance Division who will help the families connect with the resources that they need. Our investigator in charge will be Robert Gretz. He is on the way to the scene right now. He's a senior aviation investigator with the NTSB. What we know so far, and again this is preliminary information, is that a B-17 tail number November 93012 operated by Collings Foundation out of Stowe, Massachusetts with 10 passengers and 3 crew on board departed Bradley International at 9:45 a.m. this morning on runway 6. At about 9:50, the crew contacted the tower and reported an issue with the airplane. We are looking into that report for further information. We will have information later, but don't have more information on what that issue was at this time to share. We know that the crew circled back to runway 6 and attempted to land on runway 6. They impacted the instrument landing system stanchions. The plane veered to the right, crossed over a grassy area, crossed over the taxiway, and impacted a de-icing facility. We don't have much more information to share at this time because, again, we just arrived on scene at 4 p.m. We will have additional press briefings, and please monitor Twitter at NTSB_newsroom for when those will be held. In the meantime, I have a request for the public. If you have information to share that you think would be helpful to this investigation, videos, photos, or other information, we urge you to contact us through the following email address. It's witness@ntsb.gov. Again, that's witness@ntsb.gov. Now, as far as going forward with our investigation, again, some of our staff is still arriving on scene. We expect to be here about 7 to 10 days. At about 10 days is when we issue a preliminary report which provides just the factual information that we have at that time. We will not be determining a probable cause while we are on scene. That will take some time. We usually try to close out these investigations within 12 to 18 months with a final report and issue appropriate recommendations to the appropriate entities. Before I take questions, I do want to thank all the first responders that were on scene and continue to be on scene. It's been extremely helpful, and we appreciate them for their efforts, and of course all the entities that are here at this briefing. I'm going to take some questions, and then we're going to turn it over to some of the other folks, the commissioner and others, to speak as well. I will call on you if you can raise your hand, state your name and your affiliation. Yes.
Matt Karen with Fox 61. You mentioned this perishable evidence. Can you talk about what that is that you'll be collecting?
We'll collect anything from video that was provided or that we can find. We will be documenting the scene itself, looking at essentially everything that would go away once we leave the scene. We'll be collecting information from the airport, from those that operate the plane. It's going to be a lot of pictures, videos, and documentation over the next days and hours that we'll be getting information from.
Matt Olson with NBC. Just wondering, is there a black box on this type of plane? And also, are there challenges with an aircraft this old compared to more modern aircraft?
Well, first of all, we will be looking at the history of this aircraft and how it was maintained. That's part of the information we'll be seeking. As far as what black box or other sort of video or cameras that may have been on the plane, that's all information that we have to determine, and we don't have that yet at this time. But that's certainly something that's very interesting to us and that we'll be looking for. Yes?
Hi, Dillon from the Boston Globe. Can you talk a bit about the people who died and when we may know a little more about who they are?
The question was about the fatalities from this tragedy. That is something that I will defer to the local authorities. The NTSB's role here is the safety investigation, but that is a good question for the authorities. Yes?
Patricia Del Rio, Channel 3 WFSD. Are you able to ascertain when this plane was fueled and who did it? It's my understanding that these old planes are fueled by gasoline and not by jet fuel, which is something that is typically used on commercial aircraft. And is that something that you'll be looking into?
The question was about the fuel used on the aircraft and when it was last fueled. We will be looking at that information. That's standard for us to look at as part of any accident investigation. Again, we just arrived on scene, but that is something that we've discussed that we do need to obtain.
Hi,
Yes.
Sky Hernandez with WTNH. Is there any recommendation or any concern about the other B-17s that are out there right now?
The question is there a concern about other B-17s that are operating right now? It's too early in the investigation to know that at this time, but obviously that's something we'll be looking at. What I will say is that the NTSB, if they feel that there is a safety concern with the B-17s or operations in general, such as this, we will issue urgent safety recommendations to try to address that safety issue. Yes?
Suzanne Goldklein, News 12 Connecticut. How are regulations and inspections different for vintage planes than more modern ones?
The question is, how are inspections for vintage planes different from modern ones? We are looking at how these were regulated right now, under what part, and what the inspection requirements are. That's part of our investigation. We'll have more information on that as this goes along, and hopefully we'll be able to provide that at future press briefings. Yes.
Joseph Frederick, Associated Press. With a plane of this vintage, do we know yet about the number of passengers that would be allowed on a plane like this? There are 10 and then 3 crew members. Are you going to be looking into that in the course of your investigation?
The question is how many passengers are typically allowed on these types of planes. Again, that is something we look at as part of any investigation, the weight capacity of the plane, so that's something we have to determine going forward.
Just going back to the inspections really quickly, not knowing the history of the inspection with that particular aircraft, do we even know if there's a protocol for a visual inspection before a pilot were to take off?
Do you want to?
I think we have to turn.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The question is back on the investigations of vintage planes, and that is, I hate to repeat what I said, but it is part of our investigation, and we just landed at 4 o'clock, so that's information we have to look into, and we're getting information literally as we speak, so we will be able to provide that at a future time.
Sarah from Western Mass News. Do you know when the last time this plane was flown?
When this, the question is when the plane was last flown. That is a question that we have asked specifically for how many times it was flown prior to this today. We have not received that information back, but it is something we have requested, along with the number of hours that it has flown.
Just also wondering, do you have the service records already for the plane? We had heard that potentially the engines were worked on as early as this morning.
The question is on the service records, and do we have that information? That is again standard information that we request. The NTSB doesn't have that at this time, but that's something we will be obtaining.
Last question.
Eli with NBC Boston. Have you talked to the Collins Foundation people? You said you had some questions here. If so, have they cooperated with you guys thus far?
The question is, have we talked with the Collins Foundation? To my knowledge, we have not yet talked with the Collins Foundation, but that's part of our investigative process, and so I expect we will at some point. Thank you for joining us, and again, please monitor NTSB_newsroom on our Twitter feed for further press briefings.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Rovella. I'm the Commissioner of Emergency Services and Public Protection for the state of Connecticut. This is an update from our previous press conference earlier today. As you heard, NTSB is on scene. We also have the Office of the Medical Examiner on scene. Department of Energy and Environmental Protection is on scene. The FBI and Homeland Security are also on scene assisting with the investigation. The National Guard has been a great partner to us, and I'd like to mention Major General Ivan for his the work of his folks out there. They really stepped up to the plate with logistics and supporting fire roll. Connecticut State Police, ladies and gentlemen, called in over 70 officers, troopers. It's a remarkable effort. They went right to work on securing witnesses, locating video, interviewing folks, and probably the most sensitive part of this investigation, contacting family members. To this point, we've contacted family members for all but 3 of the families. We do know that we have the manifest, we have the backup information that goes with that, and we have the names of everybody that was on that plane. I will not be releasing any names today, but we do promise that we'll keep you updated, possibly tomorrow or the next day, with some of those names. We have 3 families still that need to be contacted. During the course of the next coming days, you're going to hear about some heroic efforts from some of the individuals that were in and around that plane, and we'll explain those to you as we develop those. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to talk to you about a total of 16 people here as we walk through it. None of those were children. The first 2 I'll mention are 2 airport employees. They were in the de-icing station. One was injured and transported to the hospital. One firefighter was treated with minor injuries at the scene. Moving forward to the plane. As I expressed to you earlier, there were 10 passengers on that plane and 3 crew members. There are 6 survivors in various conditions of medical condition, ranging from minor injuries to a critical. We will confirm that there are 7 deaths. As again, all but 3 of those families have been notified. So I'll take a few questions from folks.
Just talk about the rescue effort. I mean, in terms of who went in, did people go into the plane to be able to pull people out? How did all that unfold?
There is a story unfolding about a very courageous individual that went towards the plane and assisted folks in getting out. There's also some stories that will unfold later on about folks that were on that plane that were able to open a hatch and assist others in leaving. Those will all start to come out as we learn more about it.
For the pilots killed, the people operating the plane?
Right now, I'm not going to go into the positions of where the people were in the plane. Other than that, there were 7 confirmed deaths.
The rescue effort was led by the National Guard, going in there, National Guard. You had a member on board. Did you know that at the time? How is the member doing? How are you guys doing tonight? Because that's pretty heroic to go charging in.
Bob, you know, the rescue effort was led by not only the airport fire suppression group that were there, it was also led by numerous other mutual aid companies from around the area that responded. They responded with not only fire apparatus, they responded with emergency medical technicians sending folks to the hospital, and rescue workers. The general did confirm that he did have one of his employees on the, one of his soldiers on the plane, and he is a survivor with injuries.
These plane rides are very commonly popular with World War II veterans who like to reminisce being on it. Can you give us any idea of the age range of the adults who were on board?
They vary in ranges, and at this time I don't feel comfortable with explaining everybody's name and age right now. I'm sure we're going to include that in the next day or two.
Do you think those two, you mentioned 2 stories here of people who saved, do you think their actions saved lives this morning?
From what I've heard and what was passed on by the Connecticut State Police, yes. Yes.
Were people on the ground aware that something was going wrong with this plane when it was going to be landing? They had about 5 minutes.
Well, the Connecticut State Police interviewed numerous people out there, not only on the ground, but were on the plane and survived. There was a limited time.
We all saw the incredible planes. Can you talk about the challenges the first responders face in terms of just trying to get to the scene and trying to help people?
Anytime you have a fire driven by the fuel of that type and the fuel load that goes with it, the fire is extremely hot. And the firefighter that was injured was only minor, but that is a challenging fire to put out, and the airport authority fire suppression did a great job in doing that.
Do you have any reason to believe that the death toll might climb?
There is always that possibility. Yes, sir.
People take a risk in a plane that is decades old, 7 decades old, compared to a newer plane getting in a plane like that?
I don't feel qualified to really comment on that, and that's outside the scope of our investigation.
Can you talk a little bit about how many people were transported to the hospital, whether an ambulance or med-flighted?
The 6 survivors were transported, the majority were transported by ambulance. There was one that was picked up and transported by a separate vehicle.
How many of these individuals were from Connecticut? Do we know that?
We do know that right now, but I'm not prepared to release that information. Those come from the company and the manifest that was secured by the state police.
One last question.
I'm sorry, I was just going to follow up. Do we know anything about the people operating this plane, how many sort of air hours they've logged, or how many years of experience?
It's far too early to even talk about that, but I'm sure that's going to be a focus of the NTSB.
Of the 7 dead, is there a breakdown of crew members and passengers among them?
We do have the breakdown, but I'm not prepared to release that at this time. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Kevin Dillon from the Connecticut Airport Authority.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Dillon. I'm the Executive Director of the Connecticut Airport Authority. I first want to say our thoughts and prayers are certainly with all of the families that were impacted by this tragic event. I also want to thank our airport fire department and our operations staff. They were among the first to arrive on the scene, but we were certainly supported by an awful lot of mutual aid, area fire departments, area police departments, certainly the state police, TSA, Red Cross, and a number of agencies that were out there assisting us. The airport today reopened at 1:30, as we indicated in 12 noon briefing today. We did have a number of significant impacts here in terms of flight cancellations. About 20% of our activity today was canceled. About 10% of the total activity was delayed here at the airport. However, once we've reopened the airport, we've gotten into the evening hours, we're starting to restore normal operations, and we are anticipating that tomorrow we'll be pretty much back to normal in terms of flight activity. But we do urge folks to continue to check with the airlines, because the airlines have the ultimate decision as to whether or not particular flights operate. So at this point, I'll just ask if there's any questions about airport operations.
When you say tomorrow, you mean by what time tomorrow?
Our usual start time at 5 a.m. in the morning. We're hoping to be back to normal operations.
Are you continuing to operate with just one runway for now?
We are. We have enough capacity on that one runway. We are going to be working with the NTSB, though, to get the runway 6 released as soon as possible, because we are monitoring weather changes coming up.
Do you drill for these sort of emergency situations and talk about that process? How often?
We do. We have annual tabletop exercises that we do, and we have to conduct live drills for airport certification purposes every 3 years.
The plane was part of a group that was here where people could take rides or look at them, and you have a museum also here and a new exhibit coming up. Can you kind of set the scene of what the mission of these planes were this week?
Sure. The Collings Foundation is a very well-known foundation across the country. That is a nonprofit that's dedicated to the display of aircraft like this. The aircraft came here and arrived on Tuesday. They were scheduled to be here until Thursday. And again, they've operated at a number of airports here in Connecticut and certainly airports across the country.
Were they connected to the museum here, or was that an informal thing?
No, this was a separate endeavor from the museum.
Did the pilot declare an emergency and had firefighters already deployed out to the runway to intercept that aircraft in case there was a problem?
Yeah, that's going to be part of the investigation, so I don't really want to, comment at this point on what the NTSB will be looking at. But as I said earlier today, there was certainly notification after the aircraft took off, about 5 minutes after it took off, that there were issues with the aircraft. At that time, certainly our staff were starting to respond.
Will this impact de-icing abilities in the coming weeks as temperatures drop?
That's one of the things that we're going to be evaluating in terms of the damage that did occur to the de-icing facility, so we don't have a handle on that right now.
By chance, do you know the last time you had a major incident here at the airport? It seems like it's been decades.
It's been decades. Bradley Airport has a very, very good safety track record. Again, it's been decades since there's been an accident like this at the airport.
I don't know if you were planning on getting into this eventually, but I had heard that this firefighting foam that was used was this PFAS foam that several months ago we had discussed caused that chemical emergency. Can you talk about what the concerns may be with that right now?
Well, I think it's pretty well known. The FAA requires us to use a particular type of foam that contains PFAS. Airports across the country are required to do that. When we have an incident like this, we put in best practices to try to capture and contain as much foam. We are working with DEEP on the state level to make sure that we capture it as much as we can and that there are no impacts to the waterways. But we're certainly going to be working on that with DEEP over the next days.
Can you repeat again how much of your level was impacted today? How much level of business? You said about 10%. Was that from all day?
Yeah, I can give you the actual numbers. We had 39 flight cancellations and 19 delays. Okay.
Do you know if it was this plane's first flight of the day?
I'm not aware of that at this point.
And do you know if it's Bradley that fuels this plane, or is it the people with Collins? Or
Again, it's up to the Collins Foundation to determine who their fuel supplier is. Bradley Airport itself does not do any fueling of aircraft. There are a number of contractors that do fueling here.
You mentioned that an instrument stanchion was damaged, was hit. Is that going to affect the operation of the airport?
Well, that's why we're very anxious to get our main runway open, runway 6, again, so that we have the capability of that secondary runway. We do believe it could impact the minimums, the landing minimums here at the airport, but we don't think it's going to be to any significant extent at this point.
You know money, Mike?
Last question.
How much damage is done? Like, do you estimate how much money it would take to?
Yeah, we don't have a handle on that. We're making those assessments right now. Again, so I want to thank everybody. We'll be putting out future advisories as to when additional press conferences will be handled in the future, and a lot of that will be coordinated by the NTSB.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to introduce Commissioner Cady Dykes from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection.
Thank you so much. Just to follow up on the question that was asked with respect to the firefighting foam, I just wanted to provide the update that our department's emergency spill response staff remain on the scene at the airport and surrounding areas, working to assess and manage and contain any contaminants released into the environment in the wake of today's tragic accident. Contaminants released include aqueous film forming foam, or the firefighting foam that was mentioned, and of course is incredibly effective in being able to help the first responders address this fire. Also fuel and possibly the releases of ethylene glycol, the de-icing agent. So we are working with other emergency responders to deploy containment apparatus, including vacuum trucks and containment booms, to minimize releases to the environment to the extent that is practical. In particular, our emergency responders are focused on Rainbow Brook, immediately adjacent to the airport. So while our goal is to contain the contamination in the immediate vicinity of the airport, we did, out of an abundance of caution, notify residents that some contamination may reach the Farmington River. Just wanted to provide that additional information. Thank you.
Again, thank you.
Thank you very much.